Hello, this is Kickin' Cooking in Quarantine. My name is Mary Bear Shannon. I'm a reference librarian at the Haverford Township Free Library. And as I said, this is Kickin' Cooking in Quarantine. I am broadcasting from my home in Havertown, and we are just like we have done for the last 8 or 9 weeks, cooking here in my home. I am home some of the time. I'm now spending some time in the library because, as you may know, we have just started curbside pickup, which is super exciting. And so people are now able to request materials and come pick them up at the library. So I do spend time at the library, but I'm also doing programming from my home. And so I'm glad to have you here today. Again, my name is Mary Bear Shannon. I am a reference librarian at the Haverford Township Free Library. And if you hear that very loud noise, that's my dog getting a drink. He's a loud drinker. But that's the ins and outs of doing programming from one's home. And as I said, we've been doing this for a while. And as I said, we are doing curbside pickup starting today. That also means that you can pick up you can drop off books that you've had in your home since the beginning of quarantine and social distancing. So feel free to return those at the library. We are just taking returns at the library and not the CREC and the Y. Those drops are still closed just because those places are closed. But you can return your books to the library, and you can order books through our website, which is at haverfordlibrary.org. You'll see a big orange square that says order books here, and you can fill out the form. We do have our circulation employees taking those orders, filling those orders, and then calling people when those orders are ready. And you can come and get them at the library. So we are really excited about that. And again, it was a very busy first day, but we are excited to be able to serve our public in this way again. The other things that I wanted to talk about and just remind you is that we do have our Kickin' Cooking in Quarantine Facebook page. That is kind of an offshoot of our library Facebook page. And it's a place to post what you've been cooking at home, recipes, post questions about, I've got everything for this recipe except for this ingredient. What should I do? Sometimes kind of the hive mind of cookers can be a good place. So all you have to do is just type in your search, in the search section, Kickin' Cooking in Quarantine. It should pop up. You can request to join, and I will accept you. And then you're there, and you can see all the great things that people have been cooking in the past 10 weeks. Again, this is Kickin' Cooking in Quarantine. My name is Mary Bear Shannon, and I am a reference librarian at the Haverford Township Free Library. And so today I wanted to talk a little bit about just a couple more programs that are coming up. This Friday is the quarantine, not this Friday, but next Friday, the 26th, is Quarantine Coffee House. That is going to be on Friday the 26th at 7:30. All talent is welcome at the coffee house. We're asking folks to send us a maximum of 5 minutes of a performance, either singing or an instrument or reciting poetry, telling jokes. We would love to have all talents for our Quarantine Coffee House. It's Friday the 26th at 7:30. That is going to be a pre-recorded program, so you need to send your entries, and you send them to me, Shannon at haverfordlibrary.org, and we will put them together for a performance on the 26th. So that's Quarantine Coffee House. So anyway, to our subject today, Of course, Father's Day is coming up on Sunday, and I know lots of people will cook or barbecue for their dads in their lives, either their dads or their husbands or their sons. And I would love to hear from folks about what you cook for those dads in your life. I know a lot of times on Mother's Day, we take mom out and give her a day off from the kitchen. But a lot of times we will cook for our dads. So I'd love to hear what you're going to be cooking this weekend. Are you going to be grilling? Of course, we've had beautiful weather, and you can just put that in the comment section there of our live video. I think about my dad. He's been gone now almost 27 years. But I do think about the things that he loved to eat. He loved marinated flank steak, which in fact we had this past week because my youngest son graduated from high school, and that was also his favorite. My dad also really liked fried chicken. He is a true Southerner at heart, and he made very good fried chicken. And of course, in the South, they make gravy as well. It's not something that we're as used to here in the North, but he made terrible gravy. It was so thick you could slice it. So my stepmom would make the gravy, and he would make the fried chicken. But that was one of his favorites, and he was very good at cooking it. He knew exactly how long to cook it, and just to the right doneness. So, which is something that I'm not terribly good at. Love to hear what your recipes are about what you're making for Father's Day this coming Friday. And I'm also thinking about recipes that we hand down in our families. Are there recipes that you still cook that was your dad's or your parents'? It's one of those things that I think there are tried and true recipes, and the reason we keep cooking them is that they're so good. I think there's also that sense that of nostalgia, and we think about that person every time we have that dish. So I'd love to hear what you all have really passed down in your family. One of the things that I'm going to do today is I'm going to be cooking from a recipe that was my grandmother's. And when I got married, actually about 27 years ago, my anniversary is this weekend, my mom held a great event. She did a shower for me. And one of the things she gave me, and I'm actually going to reach here because it's a little out of camera here, is a recipe box. And I don't know if anybody else has a recipe box. Mine is so full, I can't get the top closed. But she gave me the box, and she also, when she invited people to my shower, she sent them blank recipe cards. And she asked people to put down a family favorite or something that they something they were famous for, or something in the family. I definitely had family members giving me recipes. And they looked like this. This is our recipe for today. And my mother actually gave me this recipe. This was my grandmother's recipe. And she was not living at the time that I got married, but it was a recipe that had been handed down to my mom. And so I always thought that was a really great gift, because I have all these great recipes that were given to me at that shower, and I have definitely cooked from them. I have friends that I know were there for the shower and were there for my wedding, and it's great to think about them as I'm cooking their dishes. So I think that's a great gift for a bride to be, or a groom to be too. I mean, I think that definitely could go both ways. But again, I am cooking from this recipe that was my grandmother's. I actually called her, she went by Gaga, which was fine when I was, 2. But when I was, when she still wanted me to call her Gaga when I was 12, I was pretty embarrassed. So, but she was my Gaga, and she was a good cook. And I remember this dish as a child. and I was really glad to have it. Before we kind of start, I've got a couple of quotes about recipes that I thought I would share. Again, my name is Mary Bear Shannon. This is Kickin' Cooking in Quarantine. And we're talking about recipes that are kind of passed down in the family. And if you've got some recipes that you still cook that have been passed down to you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. But here are just a couple of quotes about recipes. This is by Molly Weisenberg. I hate the notion of a secret recipe. Recipes are by nature derivate and mean to be shared. That is how they improve and are changed, and how new ideas are formed. To stop a recipe in its tracks, to label it secret, seems kind of mean. And I know people, have their prize recipes, but you're right. If they take that recipe to the grave, it's gone. And I think it's always better to share recipes. Linda Henley, her quote is, "If God had intended us to follow recipes, he wouldn't have given us grandmothers," which I think is great. And I didn't learn from my grandmother, but I definitely learned to cook from my mom. And I think that there's definitely things that I learned that weren't from a recipe. I think sometimes they're a good guide, but a lot of times once you have kind of the sense about cooking, then you don't always need them as much. And then that kind of leads me to my last quote by Julia Child. You learn to cook so that you don't have to be a slave to recipes. You get what's in season and you know what to do with it. So that's Julia Child. And I think that's true too. I think once we kind of get the basics of cooking, I don't know if we always need recipes. I definitely will cook just off the top of my head because I know how to cook. But I do think recipes are a good place to start, especially if you are learning how to cook. But I also know that there are some recipes that really require you to follow the recipe for it to turn out. And I think that's what we like about Cookbook Club, the group that meets at the library. When we talk about a cookbook that's well written, that we like, it's usually well edited. It's usually it's clear that the chef or the person who's written the cookbook has tried the recipes multiple times to make sure that it actually comes out perfect at the end. The thing that always kind of makes the group crazy is when we select a cookbook that's clear it hadn't been edited, that the writer had not really tested the recipes very well. So I think that especially if you're trying something new, you want to make sure that you can trust the recipe that's in front of you. So anyway, so the dish I'm going to make for us today, again, it was my grandmother's, and it is hot chicken salad. And what's interesting about this is that it's kind of retro. I mean, I think that she probably cooked it in the 50s and the 60s, which was when she was also around and she was a mom and a housewife in the late 30s and the 40s too. But what I think really makes this retro is that it has potato chips on the top, which I think when I think of a retro casserole or dish, I think of potato chips from the past. And it's funny because when I was a kind of a young 20-something, and I was in my first job, and I had a coworker who had just had a baby. And, in my head, I was like, okay, so when people are sick or they have a baby or, somebody in their family dies, you bring a casserole. So, and I didn't know what to make. I was young. And so I went to the Betty Crocker cookbook and I found a casserole that had potato chips on the top, and that's what I made. So it was very similar to the recipe that I'm making today. But that in my head, that's what casseroles were all about, was casseroles with potato chips on top. So again, this is a really retro recipe that does have potato chips on top. So again, it's called the hot chicken salad, and I am going to demonstrate it for you now. So we're going to head over to my kitchen, and again, if while we're cooking, if you can think of things that you make for your father, or you have recipes that are handed down in your family, I'd love to see those in the comments. I just want to show you how this is all put together. Again, this is the hot chicken salad. So it's chicken salad, but it's basically a casserole. And I'm going to kind of bend down my my bowl so you can see it here. And I'm going to get my recipe. And we're going to make sure that this is all put together correctly. So the first thing it calls for is chicken, cooked chicken. I've seen this mostly, baked off in the oven. It's such a beautiful day. I grilled my chicken. And it called for 2 cups. This is a little bit more than 2 cups because that's how it turned out. I grilled 2 chicken breasts and then cubed it. So that's going to go in. And then the next thing that is called for in this recipe is 2 cups of diced celery. So we're going to put that in. So again, this is the celery. It's just diced celery. It's 2 cups. Again, it's like a chicken salad, but this is going to be hot. And then it calls for toasted blanched almonds. So I got blanched slivered almonds, and then I just toasted them on a frying pan on my stove. I always have to be careful because I forget these and then they burn, but these turned out really nice. They're nice and browned, so they're going to go in. That's a 1/2 cup of toasted blanched almonds. And then and I didn't do this in advance, so bear with me. This is a small can of mushrooms. Now, I know most of the time these days we would say, oh, fresh is so much better, but I'm trying to follow this recipe the way I think my grandmother would, and she would have gotten this small can of mushrooms. I'm not, a huge fan of mushrooms, but my family is, and so I will put that in for them. If it was just for me, I would have left it out, but because I've never met a mushroom I like, but I do have people in my family that love them. A 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So we're going to put that in. And then another way, and not that this is a new ingredient, but the way they're asking for it. They asked for 2 tablespoons of grated onion. You don't see that very often. A lot of times you see, just a small dice, but this is a grated onion. So there's the juices, and it's pretty much like to a pulp. It's grated. So that is going to go in. Okay. And then it calls for a cup of mayonnaise. And then again, this is my handy dandy. I've used this before on my on Kicking Cooking. This is great because for anything that's really kind of smeary, like peanut butter, mayonnaise, you basically put this in and then you push the bottom and it comes out. It's an awesome tool. I had one for years and years from the Pampered Chef, and then it broke. And so my husband finally got me another one. I think it was this year for Christmas, and I was very grateful because it comes out with very little mess or muss. No fuss, no muss. And then the last thing that it's calling for is a can of cream of chicken soup. So again, this is very retro. Many casseroles kind of have this base, and it gives you that creaminess along with the mayonnaise for when it cooks. Okay, and so that's that. And then we're just going to stir it up. Again, this is Kickin' Cooking in Quarantine. My name is Mary Bear Shannon. Of course, all you can see is my midsection at the moment. But we are cooking hot chicken salad. This was my grandmother's recipe, and I got it from my mom when I got married. And we are making it today. We're talking about recipes that are handed down in families. I'd love to see if you have any to share for in the live comments. If you have some recipes that you have gotten pass down in your family. Love to hear what those things are. And are there any family favorites that you're cooking this weekend for Father's Day, for dear old Dad? So anyway, we're just stirring this up. We have now incorporated all of the ingredients: chicken, celery. We've got toasted blanched almonds, a small can of mushrooms, some salt, 2 tablespoons of grated onion, which I think is kind of interesting. It's kind of old-fashioned. I see those in older recipes. A cup of mayonnaise and a can of cream of chicken soup. Okay, so now we're going to transfer this to our casserole. And I'm hoping this will actually all fit in this casserole. Not completely sure. Looks like it's all going to fit, so that's good. And again, most everything in here is cooked, except for a little bit of grated onion, but it's so small that it should be good. It's going to cook for about 15 to 20 minutes in a 450-degree oven, so a really hot oven. I did this today because it wasn't so hot out. A lot of times on a summer day, I wouldn't turn on my oven, but it's such a beautiful day, and we'll probably eat outside anyway, so it's okay if I heat up my kitchen. So the last 2 things is you do a ½ cup of grated cheddar cheese, and we're going to just sprinkle that over the top. And then the last crowning glory is a cup of crushed potato chips. I got the kind of the wavy kind so that it would be kind of extra crunchy and have ridges in it. I'm not sure it really matters, but that's what I decided to get. And I'm just putting this over the top. Again, this is a very retro recipe that my grandmother made when she was a mom and was living in the 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s. I do remember eating this at her house when I was a child. The other thing she used to make was we would come and visit, and she would make a pot roast. I don't know. That was always the first night when we got there, was the pot roast. I didn't particularly like pot roast as a child. I have kind of, it has grown on me over time, but that was always her big thing, was a pot roast. So anyway, this is all ready to go in the oven. This is my hot chicken salad, and we will put that in the oven momentarily. So here we are, going back here to the table. Again, this is Kickin' Cooking in Quarantine, and it was kind of a simple recipe today. The other thing that I would love to hear from people is, are there things you'd like me to demonstrate? I mean, we've been doing this for 8 to 9 weeks. Are there things you'd like me to cook here in my home in Havertown? I'd love to hear from you. My email is shannon@haverfordlibrary.org. Again, I am a reference librarian, and we've been doing this for quite a while. I have cooked desserts. I did a lemon meringue pie last week. We've done salads. We've done we've grilled, done stuff on the grill. I did a chicken saute a couple of weeks ago. So I'd love to hear, what you'd like to see here on Kickin' Cooking in Quarantine. So I think that's about it for today. Again, we have curbside pickup started today. So if you've got items that you'd like to return, you can do that. You can also order items and come and pick them at the library. We are very excited to be able to do that again, to be able to serve our public in that way. We have been, continuing to serve our public virtually through programming and our Libby and Hoopla service, which are still available. But we are really excited now to be able to offer physical books. It is definitely, we're glad to see that happen. So if you don't know what to read, give us a call. I know a lot of people like to browse our just recently arrived shelf, and that's really not possible at this point. So give the reference desk a call. We are there between 10 and 5 every day. Part of what we do is we do what's called Reader's Advisory. And we help people find books that they may enjoy based on maybe what they've read in the past. So give us a call. We also have a chat feature on our website. You just go and you'll see the chat in the lower right-hand corner. And between 10 and 5 every day, you can chat with a librarian and find out, well, what should I read, especially if I can't browse the shelves. So anyway, glad to have you here for Kickin' Cooking in Quarantine. Again, my name is Mary Bear Shannon, and I'm glad to have had you here today. And I hope you have a great week. Bye.